Have you ever wondered who the voice in your head really belongs to? From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. It whispers about what's right and wrong, what should have been said, and all the things that might go wrong tomorrow. And at the center of this endless commentary is always a single character, I. This inner voice doesn't just narrate what's happening, it builds an identity from it. Over time, we come to believe that the voice and the character it describes are who we truly are. But here's the question that changes everything. Who is listening to this voice? When we pause long enough to ask that, we discover something surprising. We don't find another character in the story. Instead, we begin to sense that the story itself is just a construction. And we've been living inside it without ever noticing. This self-story isn't solid. It isn't stable. What we call the self is actually a habit of mind, a tendency to stitch together moments, feelings, and thoughts into a continuous narrative. It feels deeply personal, but it isn't. It's a repeating pattern, like a turning wheel, sometimes comforting, often stressful, and always in motion. Modern neuroscience has started to catch up with this insight. Scientists have identified a network in the brain called the default mode network, a set of regions that light up when we're not focused on a task. It's responsible for mind wandering, remembering the past, imagining the future, and thinking about ourselves. From a scientific view, this inner narration is just brain activity. But the Buddha invited us to look even deeper, not at where it's happening, but at what it actually is. In early Buddhist teachings, this ongoing mental activity is called mental formations, sankhara, the mental constructs that shape how we experience the world. These formations aren't random, they are built from habits, reactions, preferences, and conditioning, but most importantly, they are not permanent. The Buddha emphasized that mental formations are impermanent by nature. They arise and pass away from moment to moment. This is the truth of impermanence, anicca. Take a moment to reflect on this. What's something you strongly believed about yourself 5 years ago? Does it still feel just as true now? Most likely, something has shifted. That shift is a small window into a deeper truth. The self we carry is constantly changing. That's why the Buddha taught his students to observe every part of experience and say clearly, "This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself." This isn't a poetic metaphor, it's a direct pointer. When you see this for yourself, even for a moment, the illusion of solidity begins to crack. This restlessness to become someone better, wiser, or more lovable isn't just a modern problem. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard described it as a kind of existential despair. He said, "We fall into despair both when we try to become a perfect self and when we try to escape the self we hate. Either way, we are stuck chasing or resisting a self-image." This fits perfectly with what the Buddha saw. The inner narrator is always trying to fix something that isn't actually broken. It's just not stable to begin with. It's like trying to sculpt water. No matter how skilled we are, the form won't last. How a simple moment becomes me. We've seen that the inner narrator isn't a solid identity but a process. A stream of habits, perceptions, and reactions. But how does this stream actually begin? How does a single, simple moment like hearing a sound turn into a personal story filled with craving, irritation, or identity? To answer that, we need to slow things down and look at what the Buddha described as the chain of experience. It all begins with contact, phassa. This is the bare meeting of sense and object. The ear receives a sound. The skin feels pressure. The eye sees light and form. At this point, nothing personal has entered. There's no judgment, no meaning, just contact. A neutral event in nature. But the mind doesn't stop there. In the very next moment, feeling, vedana, arises. It happens immediately, without thought. It's the raw tone of the experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This isn't emotion yet, it's the body's basic response to the contact. You don't choose it, it's just part of how the nervous system works. Then comes perception, sanya. The mind identifies what the experience is. That sound is labeled as birdsong. That voice is labeled as angry. This step isn't reflective or deliberate, it's lightning fast. In a split second, a world is built out of raw sensation. Now enters mental formation, sankhara, the part where the inner narrator starts speaking. Based on the label given by perception, the mind reacts. A desire arises for the birdsong to continue. A wave of aversion appears against the angry tone. From this, The voice in the head is born again. I like this. I hate that. Why does this always happen to me? What began as a neutral sound is now part of a personal drama. And crucially, none of this is being authored by a central self. These reactions emerge automatically from conditions, memories, habits, and past impressions. There is no one behind the curtain pulling the strings. So where does consciousness, vijnana, fit into all this? The Buddha was very precise here. Consciousness isn't a master controller or a hidden soul. It doesn't sit above experience deciding what to do. It arises moment by moment as each experience happens. There is hearing consciousness when there is a sound, feeling consciousness when there is a sensation, thought consciousness when there is memory. Each type of consciousness is conditioned by what comes before it. It's not a single observer. It's more like a spotlight lighting up whatever enters the stage. This insight helps us understand what Jiddu Krishnamurti pointed to when he spoke of observation without the observer. He saw that the more deeply we look into experience, the less we find someone inside doing the looking. What we find instead is a seamless, impersonal process. Each moment feeds into the next with no fixed center. But the Buddha went further. He didn't just describe this insight, he offered a clear path to realize it directly. Through the practice of mindfulness, especially in insight meditation, vipassana, we can begin to see this chain reaction in real time. We notice contact, we notice feeling, we see the label forming, and we pause. In that pause, something powerful becomes visible. The story of me is being assembled from impersonal events. And the more clearly we see that, the less tightly we cling to it. There is no one behind the mind. The key to understanding the ego is realizing that our mental life unfolds through cause and effect. Not from a central controller. Not from a solid self. Emotions, thoughts, and even awareness itself are not initiated by someone sitting behind the curtain pulling the strings. They arise when certain conditions meet. What we call our experience is actually a stream of conditioned events. It only feels personal because we habitually assume someone is having the experience. But if we look deeply, we find something surprising. The mind has a deep-rooted habit. It always looks for an owner. When a thought appears, it immediately asks, "Who thought that?" When a feeling arises, it searches for the one who feels it. We are trained to imagine a hidden self, a fixed observer, a thinker behind the thoughts. But if we stay with that question honestly and patiently, if we keep asking, "Who is aware of this?" we eventually reach silence. There is no final observer. There's just knowing, happening on its own. Many spiritual traditions speak of a soul or a permanent self, what some call the Atman. The Buddha didn't mock these views. Instead, he gently invited us to look closer. He pointed out that what we call knowing depends entirely on conditions. Sight needs an eye and a visible object. Sound needs an ear and a vibration. There is no seeing without both the eye and the object. This is not opinion. It's the very heart of dependent origination. Consciousness doesn't stand alone, it arises in dependence. One day, the Buddha met a wandering seeker named Bahiya. He knew Bahiya had only moments to live, so he didn't give him a long sermon. He gave him the essence. The Buddha said, "In the seen, there is only the seen. In the heard, only the heard. In the sensed, only the sensed. In the known, only the known." If you can live like that, there is no you in that process. No one here, no one there, and no one in between. Just this, and that is the end of suffering. This is not abstract philosophy. It's the most direct pointing possible. So if we return to the question, who is aware of the ego? We can now see that the question itself rests on a misunderstanding. Awareness exists, yes, but it does not belong to anyone. It's not mine. It's not a witness sitting above life. It is a natural event, a moment of knowing conditioned by causes. And yet, there's a final trap. Once we begin to see that awareness is impersonal, the mind may try to claim even that. It may say, "I am awareness," but that, too, is subtle clinging. True insight goes even deeper. It lets go of everything, even the idea of being awareness. It doesn't replace the ego with a spiritual identity. It simply sees things clearly, no self, no center, just experience unfolding. How to practice clear seeing in daily life. To move toward real freedom, we need more than good intentions. We need a way of seeing that is rooted in direct experience. In Buddhism, one powerful method for developing this kind of clarity is called vipassana. a word that means clear seeing or insight. It's important to understand that vipassana is not the only path in Buddhism. It's one among many methods the Buddha offered for cultivating wisdom. What makes it unique is its focus on observing the mind and body with gentle awareness. Moment by moment, practicing insight doesn't mean we try to stop our thoughts or force the mind into silence. It means learning to watch without judgment whatever arises, thoughts, feelings, sensations, as they come and go. No need to fight them. No need to follow them. You simply watch. A thought appears, then disappears. A feeling surges, then fades. Through this, you begin to realize something quietly radical. None of these inner experiences are solid. None of them are truly you. They're just passing patterns, temporary, shifting, and always in motion. Over time, this way of seeing brings a new kind of freedom. Instead of being pulled into every reaction or overwhelmed by every emotion, you become aware. You're not escaping your experience, you're meeting it with presence. A thought appears and you notice. A wave of anger comes and you pause. This pause isn't cold detachment. It's warm attention. It's the space where insight begins. You can try this in daily life with something very simple. Just pause. When a strong emotion arises, anger, fear, sadness, don't immediately act on it. Pause not to suppress the feeling, but to feel it clearly. Ask, where is it in the body? Is there tightness, heat, pressure? Stay with it, even just for a few breaths. You'll often notice that the emotion begins to soften on its own. It loses its grip. You're not pushing it away, you're allowing it to unfold naturally. This small shift in awareness changes everything. Other wisdom traditions offer valuable perspectives, too. For example, the Stoic philosophers taught that we should separate what happens from how we interpret it. That's powerful, but Buddhist insight goes even deeper. It doesn't stop at managing our reactions. It questions the very idea of a fixed self behind them. The teachings invite us to look so closely, so honestly, that even the sense of I starts to loosen. We see the self not as a solid identity, but as a flow of conditions, changing, dependent, and not ultimately ours. This practice isn't easy. It asks for both courage and patience. The Buddha spoke often of two inner strengths that help us walk this path. Virya, the steady energy to keep going, and Khanti, the quiet patience to endure. Especially when the journey feels unclear. These two qualities support each other like the wings of a bird. With both, the heart slowly learns to fly. As we go deeper, we start to see that we don't really own our thoughts, our feelings, or even our body. We are not in control in the way we once imagined. And strangely, this isn't terrifying, it's freeing, because when we stop clinging, the mind begins to rest. We stop struggling to hold everything together. Things come and go, and we're okay with that. And if all this sounds like too much, don't worry. You don't have to understand it all today. You don't need to force anything. Just try one thing. The next time you feel overwhelmed, pause. Feel what's happening in your body. Don't run from it. Don't react too quickly. Just stay for a few breaths. That simple act of presence is already the beginning of insight. When the self disappears, compassion arises. We've now seen how the mind creates a sense of ownership. An inner narrator that claims every thought, feeling, and experience as mine. But once that illusion begins to fade, something remarkable happens. This isn't just a shift in understanding, it's a deep release. The burden of always needing to protect and define myself starts to fall away. And in that space, something softer, quieter, and more spacious begins to emerge. The illusion of a separate me never stands alone. It always brings with it the illusion of a separate you. This is the root of so much human suffering. The moment we believe in this boundary, we begin to compare, to compete, to divide. We guard our identities like borders on a map that was never real. From this comes loneliness, jealousy, and conflict, not because people are bad, but because we're trapped inside a false view of separation. But when this line between self and other starts to dissolve, even slightly, something shifts. Compassion stops being a practice we try to do. It becomes the natural response of a heart that no longer feels separate. When you see another person suffering, it's no longer their pain. It's just suffering. There's no inner voice asking, do they deserve help? Or, what will I get in return? There is simply a gentle movement toward care. This is not a strategy. It is freedom. The Buddha called this karuna, compassion that arises from clear seeing, not from obligation. And he wasn't alone. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, deeply influenced by Eastern thought, once said that all real morality comes from the ability to see through the illusion of self and other. When the wall between us drops, kindness is no longer a virtue. It's the only thing that makes sense. This, perhaps, is the quiet miracle of the path. The deeper we look into the nature of the mind, not to escape the world, but to understand it, the more we come home to something warm and human. We do not end in cold emptiness. We arrive at a fullness that is light, kind, and deeply alive. This is the kind of peace that doesn't need the world to behave a certain way. It's not about fixing life. It's about meeting it open and unburdened. And that is the real ending, not of the world, but of the exhausting story we've been telling ourselves all our lives, the story of me. When that story fades, what remains is not a blank slate, but a vast, compassionate presence, a heart that finally has room for everything.